So in this video I'm going to talk about why some ideas spread, or why we share content on social media, which is a topic that I am personally quite interested in. So we're talking about social transmissions and the power of word of mouth. Word of mouth is very important to understand from a digital and a particular social media marketing perspective, because word of mouth is the primary factor behind up to half of all our purchase decisions. And when we're talking about word of mouth, it's the key characteristics that differentiates social media marketing from the wider area of digital marketing. And it's important to understand, important to keep in mind that social media marketing is about sharing something that is of interest to the audience. It is not another channel of advertising. It is not about sending out buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff. Rather, it is about creating content that people would like to share. Word of mouth, of course, is more persuasive than advertising, because it comes from trusted sources, from sources that consumers want to hear from. So it should be targeted at towards the right audience at the right time. And if you're thinking about the sort of stuff that consumers will share, we don't share stories, we don't share things on social media that we don't think would be of interest to the audience. We put things out there because we think that the audience would find it interesting, and advertisers or marketers need to have the same approach if they're going to have success in social media marketing. Yes. So we'll ask the question, is virality random? And quite often we see things that goes viral and then it's like, yeah, why did that go viral? That was kind of stupid. But in this video we're going to try to untangle and better understand what the underlying issues are. Why do people talk? What is the psychology of sharing, and why does certain messages get talked about over others? We will understand this in this through this video. So there's two main philosophies of why some ideas spread. Some researchers look at the characteristic of the actual message, such as Jonah Berger, which I'll talk about in this video. Other researchers look at influentials, whether that is the whole network of people, such as Malcolm Gladwell, or whether it is more characteristics in people themselves, which is what Seth Godin looks at. So in terms of message characteristics, Jonah Berger looks at 6 principles of contentiousness. Not all of these needs to be included in any successful campaign, but all of these gives good explanations as to why some content is more likely to be shared via social than others. So let's look at these 6 steps. Now, social currency is all about what we talk about influences how other people sees us. If you on social media over and over again talk about one specific topic, then that's what people are going to think about when they think about you. And we want to share things that makes us look good in the eyes of others, and that's what motivates us to share a lot of the content that we share on social media. Now, if we want people to talk about our product or brand or message, that message then needs to give people that social currency or bragging rights, if you want. And there's a couple of ways that we can do that, either by showing remarkability, leverage on sort of a game mechanisms, or making people feel like insiders. So let's look at these. Now, remarkable things are the things that are obviously worthy of remark, so to speak, because they are unusual, they are interesting, they are novel. If you want to understand more depth about what is meant by remarkability, look at the other video here and Seth Godin's arguments about the purple cow. What it refers to is that we want to share messages that makes us look good in the eyes of others, and we do that by sharing stuff that other people have not seen before. Things that are new and novel. Of course, more remarkable products, such as the latest technology of fashion, they get twice as much word of mouth as less interesting products, such as banks or medicine or insurance and so forth. So obviously that makes it a lot easier to some extent to create content if you have a product that in and of itself is remarkable. Now, another way to produce social currency is to leverage game mechanisms. And we love games because we love achievements. So when we provide points and levels, etc., that gives us some tangible evidence that we have made certain achievements. And a few years back when we played Pokemon Go, we always had the opportunity to share various parts of the game when we had caught a specific Pokemon or achieved a certain level, and we would share that on social media. I'm sure some of you did share that with your friends on social media, where you were in the game, and so we have this competition going on, and we as humans are geared towards that because we like to compete, and we like to achieve things, and we like to then brag to others when we have received certain milestones. Now, we love playing games and we love sharing our achievements in the games on social media because it encourages social comparison, and social hierarchies is a natural part of human existence, whether you like it or not. And in experimental studies we have even seen that people are willing to say, look, I'm ready to make less money overall if that means that, well, at least I was beating my classmates or beating my peers in that sense. So games and milestones in games indicates where you stand in comparison to others, and doing well in games makes us look good, which again gives us bragging rights, and then again that leads to the social currency. It's worth considering for any brand or organization to look at how can your brand be gamified, or how can you produce social content that can be gamified. So this example here is from the app Untapped, where people can go in and rate and write reviews of the beers that they consume. I have a lot of friends that are completely obsessed with this, including some of my brothers, and the app is quite good on gamifying things and giving you badges and always giving you this sort of sense of achievement for each beer that you have tried and then rated. And of course there's a social function, so you add in your friends and they can see how many beers you've consumed and rated and so forth, and that gives you bragging rights and puts you in the social standing and hierarchy against others. Making people feel like insiders is another very effective way to establish social currency. When we get something that we feel that other people are not getting, that makes us feel special, and then we are more likely to want to share that experience with others, because it shows that we have a higher standing again. Now the next step is triggers. And there's some curious things about triggers, because what's on this slide seems to even almost contradict what I said before, because I said that products or brands that are remarkable, that are new, surprising or interesting gets talked about more than those that are not. But that only relates to the immediate word of mouth. Wow, this was new, I got to talk about this straight away. But that doesn't mean that we keep talking about it. Whether or not we keep talking about it has more to do of the degree to whether it is on top of our mind, and there's no necessarily correlation between keeping something that is new and surprising and interesting on the top of our mind. So there's a difference between immediate and ongoing word of mouth when it comes to triggers. Now, ideas that are more accessible in our minds are likely to be talked about more. So what is on top of our minds tends to also be at the tip of our tongue. So more casual chats, regular general conversations tend to be space fillers to avoid awkward silence. That's why we talk about the weather so often, for example. It's top of our mind, and as such, these are things that we like to talk about more often. So how can brands use triggers? The most common one, I would say, is just to use natural connections. Fast food companies are really good at this. Think gotta hunger, gotta have a Snickers, for example. Or you can associate a brand with a specific context. Budweiser has done this many times, and there's an example on the slide about how they associate watching sports and friends with drinking that awful beer. Other ways is to try to put your brand into a new habitat. Kit Kat had a collaboration with Starbucks a few years back where they were putting the Kit Kats on the counter, and the sales of Kit Kats went up very dramatically because chocolate coffee is sort of a reasonable association. Now, effective triggers need to build in a number of links. So it's easy to come up with one, such as coffee, chocolate. Okay, that's one. But then it's also at the point of purchase there, so it's right there. They are more effective when we get reminded about it right in that point of purchase. So this is another thing, and you got to think about these triggers and think about how many of them can I possibly stuff in and build in order to strengthen that relationship. Context also matters. So in the example here, that may work really well from an English or Western perspective when we read from the left to the right, but in other languages when they read from the right to the left, this ad may be perhaps a little bit less effective. Now the next level on the steps is emotions. Emotions are really interesting because, well, overall we see that people are more likely to share positive than negative content. However, what is more important than whether things is just positive or negative is the level of arousal. So things that, for example, makes us angry, furious, anxious is more likely to be shared than things that just makes us a little bit sad. So things that makes us feel ecstasy or excitement, amusement get shared, and not things that just makes us feel a little bit happy or a little bit content. So we want to hit those really high arousal, high level emotions, but that's really difficult to do, and when that happens, sometimes it almost looks like that's what happened out of chance, and that it's very hard to plan. So emotions is perhaps a difficult step to really nail, but when that happens, it tends to work quite well. If you look at some of the examples on the slide there, you can look at those videos, and I think both of my examples of amusement and anger, both of those were not something that necessarily was planned to go viral, but it was certainly capitalized upon later once after they did. Now, even companies like Google recognize the importance of focusing on emotions. And you may notice from time to time Google have different types of backgrounds and they play around with that. And designers at Google are very strongly focused on that. And it's interesting, even for a search engine that is based on providing people with information, recognizes the fact that people want to be entertained. They don't want to be told something, they want to be moved and they want to be entertained. Now the next step is making things public, because that provides social proof. We like to conform and imitate what other people do. It's a fairly common human tendency, as much as we like to think that we are individuals and that we do things our own way. Witnessing other people consume reinforces our beliefs that what we are doing is reasonable, and we see this happening in research and in a variety of examples, whether that is about buying cars or whether that is about our drinking behavior. Now, product and ideas that are readily observable by others, such as, for example, having a great moustache, is more likely to be imitated. And this is one of the reasons why the Movember campaign has been so successful and run for so many years. Growing a moustache for a month, it is something that everyone can see because it's right there in the middle of your face, and as such it is more likely to be imitated, and this explains the success of that particular campaign. Other ways that brands use this is like Apple is very good at it, for example, making the private public. Always put in that standard signature sent from my iPhone. Apple also does this by having, for example, the white earphones as opposed to the standard color black ones. They were the first ones to put out the white ones, and as such everyone can see that you have an iPhone. Now, moving on, practical value. It's about sharing things that provide useful information or something that others can use, and we want to sharing information that is of use to others strengthens our social bonds, and it also gives us satisfaction when we helped someone else. My example here is obviously a fake one, and something that perhaps you have shared sometimes on social media or something similar, and then realizing that you got tricked into sharing something fake and embarrassed yourself. Now, to really provide practical value, the main focus should not be on advertising your brand. It should be of providing something that may be of use and interest or feel attractive to the target audience. So here's just an example of a newsletter email that I received from the company that produces the machine I use for my home brewing. So here's an extra product that can rebuild my home brewing machine into a machine that can also distill alcohol, so I can make spirits and that sort of stuff. I haven't gotten into that yet, but nevertheless, the focus of this email is clearly not on flogging a brand message. It is on trying to provide some extra attractive value to me as a consumer. Now, the last step is stories, and I would argue that this is the most important one. We don't think in terms of information, we think in terms of narratives and stories. So when you ask me, can you provide an example, what you really are asking me is, can you tell me a story so that I can relate to this theory or what it is that you're saying? Stories are more effective because they are personal, and as such they are perceived as more trustworthy, and they are then more easy to remember. So is there a limit to how far we can go in telling stories around our brands? I have a look at this little humorous video here by clicking on the link on the slide. It is not a real product, but it really goes deep into storytelling, or well, it's sort of taking a piss out of storytelling, which I find quite humorous. Now, people talk about stories and they share stories, not branded information. So it's therefore important that your story is actually relevant to the brand. People don't have time for a 30-second interruption with a branded message. However, they have half an hour for a story. So a couple of final slides here that sums up the STEPPS model. Have a read of these and go back and watch the video again if there was something that was unclear.